I woke up at 6, me, before anyone else. The house was quiet, still soaking in the last bits of sleep. I tiptoed down the hallway, pulled my hair into a bun, and started making breakfast. Not because anyone asked me to, they never do, but because that's what I've always done. Eggs over medium, crispy bacon, pancakes stacked and kept warm in the oven, fresh squeezed orange juice. Fruit arranged like I was auditioning for a lifestyle blog. I even made decaf for Mom because caffeine messes with her heart, and I brewed a second pot of regular because God forbid Dad drink anything less than jet fuel. It took 2 hours, but when I was done, the table looked beautiful. The plates matched. The forks were polished. The butter was softened just right. I stood there for a second, proud not in a showy way, but in that quiet kind of way where you hope someone might notice all the things you do without being told. They started trickling in around 8:30. My sister, half awake, grabbed a plate without saying a word. My mom sighed like the air itself was bothering her. My dad glanced up from his newspaper and muttered something about "smells good." That was the most enthusiastic reaction I got. And then came Derek, my brother. Still wearing the hoodie he's had since college, hair unbrushed, phone in hand. He sat down, scooped 3 pancakes onto his plate, drowned them in syrup, and took a huge bite. I watched him, waiting for anything. A thank you, a nod, a look. Instead, he looked up at me with a smirk and said, "Nobody asked you to do all this. Don't act like you're a martyr." It hit me like a slap, not because of what he said, but how easily it came out. Like I was stupid for trying. Like caring was pathetic. No one said anything. No one defended me. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not even my sister, who had the audacity to giggle behind her coffee mug. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up. Slowly, carefully. Took off my apron and folded it over the back of the chair like it was a flag I was retiring. And I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a scene. But inside, something broke. Something that had been cracking for years and finally, quietly, gave way. My room was the only place in that house that still felt like mine. I didn't storm off to it, I drifted there, numb, like my body was moving without permission. I closed the door softly behind me, sank down onto the edge of my bed, and stared at the floor for a while. My hands still smelled like maple syrup and dish soap. The worst part was how unsurprised I felt, like deep down, I'd known. I'd always known. But when I turned to pull back my blanket, I froze. There was something on my pillow folded in half, clean edges, placed with intention. A piece of paper. I hadn't left it there. No one had been in my room this morning. At least, I didn't think so. I picked it up slowly, heart already thudding like a warning drum. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten, in quick, almost shaky letters. Just one line on the outside. "Read this when you're alone." I hesitated for a second. Then I opened it. "Don't trust what they say. I know what really happened last night." My stomach dropped. I read it again. Slower this time. The letters weren't familiar at first, but something about the capital R's reminded me of someone, maybe Derek. But no, he didn't write like this. And even if he did, why would he write this? Last night. What happened last night? I'd gone to bed early like always. I was tired from prepping ingredients and cleaning up after dinner. I remembered hearing some muffled voices while I was brushing my teeth, probably my parents bickering again in the kitchen. That was nothing new. But something about the wording in this note sent a chill up my spine. It wasn't just gossip or drama. It felt like a warning. The next line hit harder. They're hiding something from you. Be careful who you confront. I stared at it, feeling like someone had dropped a live wire into my hands. What the hell was going on? Was this a prank? Some twisted attempt to mess with me? Or worse, was it true? I checked the hallway. Empty. The muffled sounds of breakfast chatter were still floating in from downstairs. I closed the door again, locked it this time, and sat on the edge of the bed with the note in my lap. The words ran circles in my head. Don't trust what they say. Be careful who you confront. My mind began rewinding like a broken tape. The quiet arguments I wasn't allowed to join. The glances exchanged when I asked too many questions. The way my name would drop out of certain conversations. The way people stopped talking when I walked in the room. I always thought it was just my anxiety, me being too sensitive. But what if it wasn't? What if I wasn't the problem? What if I was just the one they needed to keep in the dark? I read the note again, folded it up, slipped it into the back of my journal. Whoever wrote it, they wanted me to know something. Something real. And even though it scared the hell out of me, I couldn't ignore it. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just tired. I was suspicious. And suspicion has a way of turning everything you thought you knew into quicksand. The note didn't leave my mind. It sat there like a grain of sand in my eye, small, but impossible to ignore. I read it again the next morning, then again that night. I kept it tucked inside my journal like a secret I hadn't decided whether I wanted to keep or expose. But once the seed of doubt is planted, it doesn't stay quiet. The next few days felt off. Everyone acted normal, too normal. Mom called me sweetheart more than usual. Dad offered to take the trash out, which he hadn't done since the Clinton administration. Derek made me coffee, which felt so bizarre I actually laughed out loud when he handed me the mug. What he asked? Like the gesture was totally routine. I didn't confront anyone, not yet. Instead, I started watching. I listened closely during family conversations, noted what was said and what wasn't. I replayed memories in my head like crime scene footage, searching for anything I might have missed. And then I remembered something. It was a night when I was 17. The house had been tense all week. Mom's voice had a permanent edge, and Dad's silence was louder than usual. One night, I woke to the sound of glass breaking. When I got to the kitchen, Mom was cleaning up a shattered wine glass. Her hand was bleeding. Dad was standing there like a statue. I asked what happened, and they both looked at me like I wasn't supposed to be awake. Just an accident, she'd said. Dad added nothing. I believed them. I had no reason not to. I was the quiet kid, the helper, the one who didn't ask questions. I was always told I was mature for my age, but really, I think I just learned early how to read a room and shrink myself to keep the peace. But now, looking back, that night didn't sit right. Why hadn't Dad spoken? Why had Mom rushed to send me back to bed? And why did Derek avoid eye contact with me for days afterward? I remembered something else, too, a conversation I'd overheard years later. Derek was on the phone, talking to someone I didn't recognize. He was pacing the backyard, and I was upstairs, windows open. He didn't know I was listening. She still doesn't know, he said. It's better that way. If she asks, we'll just say it wasn't a big deal. At the time, I assumed it was about something stupid, maybe my surprise birthday party that year, or the time someone scratched my car and blamed it on the neighbor's kid. But now it felt loaded. I went digging. Not in drawers, at least not yet, but in memory. In the stories they told over the years, the inconsistencies, the gaps, the way they always skipped over the year, Dad lost his job. How they talked about Mom's bad back, but never explained why she had that long scar across her lower shoulder blade. How Derek got a new car out of nowhere when he turned 22, even though we were supposedly tight on money. I started wondering, was it really about the breakfast, or had this always been about something deeper, something buried? What if the note wasn't warning me about what happened after breakfast, but what happened long before it? And then I remembered the settlement. It had only come up once, vaguely, years ago. I overheard my parents talking about making sure it didn't get messy. I assumed it was about a legal dispute Dad had with a former employer. He'd won, apparently. But I was never told anything. Just that it was handled. I hadn't thought about it since. Until now. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I quietly pulled a storage bin from the garage labeled Taxes, Archive, inside. Layers of papers, receipts, letters, legal forms, and tucked in a folder. A document that made my throat close up. A legal settlement. It was dated 10 years ago. My father's name, my mother's signature. Derek listed as a secondary contact. And my name crossed out. Not omitted, not forgotten, crossed out. The pen stroke was angry, deliberate. Like someone wanted to erase me, but not quietly. I sat on the cold concrete floor, heart racing, hands trembling. No one ever told me about this. No one even hinted. And I wasn't some kid when this happened. I was 23, old enough to deserve the truth. I didn't know what the money was for. I didn't know why I was excluded. But I knew one thing: someone wanted to make damn sure I stayed out of it. And then it hit me. The note on the pillow. Whoever left it, they knew. And they wanted me to start asking the right questions. Once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. After finding the settlement document, I couldn't sit still. I tried to sleep that night, but my brain wouldn't shut up. I kept picturing my name crossed out as if someone had taken a Sharpie to my existence. Not removed, not forgotten, erased, and not gently. The next morning, I played the part, sat at the breakfast table, made small talk, smiled, but inside, everything was vibrating. They were all acting like nothing was wrong. Derek was eating cereal like he hadn't just stolen something from me 10 years ago. My parents were chatting about the weather. It was like watching actors in a bad play, flat lines, stiff faces, and everyone ignoring the fire burning down the set. So I did what I do best. I got methodical. I started with the obvious, the family laptop. It technically belonged to my dad, but I was always the one who handled updates and organized folders. He used the same 3 passwords for everything, and I still remembered them. I found an old folder labeled Legal 2013 buried in a directory titled Car Insurance Docs. Classic misdirection. Inside were PDFs of legal correspondence, scans of checks, and emails between my dad and someone from a law firm. I read every word, every thread. The case wasn't about employment. It was a personal injury suit against a former contractor who worked on our house. Apparently, something went wrong. Faulty wiring, unsafe installation. There had been an incident, a fire, minor injuries, and a whole lot of liability. I vaguely remembered a kitchen repair happening that summer, but they told me it was just a leak. Turns out, Mom was hurt. She'd gone to the ER. There were photos, grainy scans of her shoulder. The scar I'd always been told was from a fall in the garden. And the settlement, it was substantial. 6 figures. Enough to change things. But here's the kicker: I was supposed to be listed as a beneficiary. I found the original draft of the agreement. My name was there, in print. It wasn't until the second revision that my name disappeared, and in the handwritten notes scanned beside it, a sentence stood out like a flare in the dark. Remove Jamie from disbursement. Unnecessary complication. Keep funds in household? I read that line a dozen times, like repetition would dull the sting. Unnecessary complication. That's what I was to them. Not a daughter, not a person who deserved to know the truth. A complication. At that point, I couldn't breathe. It was like my chest forgot how. I got up, went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face. I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. I didn't cry. Not then. I felt something colder. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. They didn't just lie to me. They chose to exclude me. To cut me out of something I had a right to know, a right to be part of. And yet they still expected me to show up, cook their meals, plan their parties, smile at the right moments, be their emotional caretaker while they quietly robbed me of everything they didn't think I needed to know. I wanted to scream, but instead, I sat down at my laptop and started writing. Not to them, not yet. To myself, a list of every time I'd been shut down, brushed off, manipulated into silence. The holidays I paid for. The times I was told I was too sensitive. The way they guilted me into thinking that needing something for myself was selfish. Then I went further. I checked the family PayPal account technically in my name, since I was always the one handling logistics. There, I saw it. Transfers. Deposits from the settlement funneled over time to Derek, to my parents. Nothing had ever come to me, and nobody had ever asked if I noticed, because they were counting on me never looking. But now I was looking, and I wasn't stopping. I backed up every file, every document, every thread. I printed the key ones, stored them in a folder. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew this. I wasn't going to let them write me out of my own story. I didn't make a scene. I didn't send a dramatic group message or call a family meeting. I just decided. One morning, I packed a single suitcase. I didn't need much, just enough to be gone for a while or maybe forever. I wasn't sure yet. I folded my clothes with care, not because I was rushing, but because for once, I was moving with intention. My movements weren't angry. They were precise, final. Before I left, I walked through the house one last time. It looked the same as always, slightly too clean, like someone was trying to convince the world we were normal. I passed the hallway photos. My face was in most of them, always off to the side, always smiling too wide. I paused at one taken at a family barbecue. Everyone was laughing. I remembered that day I'd spent the whole morning setting up the grill, buying ice, organizing food. I wasn't even in half the photos because I was behind the camera. I left the photo where it was, in the kitchen. I placed the house key on the counter. Next to it, a small note folded in half, not angry, not even explanatory. Just one line. You always knew I was tired. You just didn't care. Now it's your turn. I didn't wait for them to come home. I didn't want to hear excuses or backpedaling or you're taking this too far. I didn't need closure from people who'd built an entire reality on pretending I didn't need any. The cabin I'd booked was quiet, a small place in the woods, just outside the city. One bedroom, no Wi-Fi, no cell service, just a fireplace, a small kitchen, and snow piling up on the windowsill. For the first time in years, I slept without waking up anxious. I cooked simple meals for myself not to impress anyone, not to earn approval, just because I was hungry and I deserved to be fed. I didn't tell anyone where I went, not even the few friends I still trusted. It wasn't about disappearing. It was about choosing me. For days, I did nothing but sit and think and breathe and write. Not to them, to myself. I wrote about what it felt like to carry a family like scaffolding and what it feels like when that scaffolding finally cracks. I wasn't angry anymore. That was the surprising part. I thought I'd feel rage, resentment, maybe even grief. But all I felt was relief. Pure, quiet relief. Because they were finally experiencing life without me. And I was finally living one without them. Not out of spite, not to punish, just because it was long overdue,